It was my daughter Rebecca's 45th birthday, and I had arrived early at her house with the cake I had specially ordered from her favorite bakery. It cost $200, but for my only daughter, nothing was too expensive. I knocked on the door with a smile, expecting to see her face light up like it did when she was a little girl, but when she opened it, her expression was one of total annoyance. "Oh, it's you," she muttered, without even looking me in the eye. "Happy birthday, my love," I said, extending the cake with the little candles already in place. "I brought your favorite chocolate with strawberries, just like when you were little." Rebecca sighed deeply, as if my presence were an unbearable burden. "Mom, we need to talk," she said dryly, letting me in without even thanking me for the cake. We sat in the living room of her beautiful house, the house that I had completely financed when she and Hugo got married. It had been $150,000 from my life savings, money I had saved penny by penny working double shifts as a nurse for 40 years. "You know, Mom," Rebecca began in that cold voice she had developed in recent years, "I've been thinking a lot about my birthday, about gifts, about what would really make me happy." I nodded enthusiastically. "Of course, my love. Tell me what you want, and I'll get it for you." "A trip? Jewelry? Maybe that new car you mentioned?" Rebecca looked me directly in the eyes, and what I saw there chilled me to the bone. It was pure contempt. "What I would like most as a birthday gift," she said slowly, savoring each word, "is for you to just die." The world stopped. I literally felt as if someone had ripped my heart out of my chest. The words echoed in my ears like an endless refrain. My daughter, my own daughter, had wished for my death as a birthday present? What? What did you just say? I managed to whisper, feeling tears begin to well up in my eyes. "You heard me," she continued with a coldness that cut through me like knives. "I'm tired of you, Mom. Tired of your constant calls, your unexpected visits, of you always being here, bothering me. My life would be so much easier and happier if you just disappeared." My hands were shaking uncontrollably. 72 years of life, 45 of being her mother, and never ever did I think I would hear those words come out of her mouth. "Rebecca," I managed to say between sobs, "I'm your mother. I've given you everything. I've sacrificed everything for you." "Exactly," she interrupted, getting up from the sofa. "And that's precisely why you're suffocating me. I can't breathe with your constant presence. I need freedom. I need you to let me live my life without your drama and your emotional needs." The $200 cake was still in my hands, the little candles beginning to melt. Everything I had dreamed of for that day, hugs, laughter, maybe a family dinner, was vanishing like smoke. "But, daughter," I tried one more time, "I just want to be close to you, to be a part of your life. You're all I have." "And that's precisely the problem," she responded, crossing her arms, "that I'm all you have. Get a life of your own and leave me alone." I rose from the sofa with trembling legs, carrying that cake that now felt like a mockery. "I can't believe you're saying this to me," I murmured, "after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done," she laughed sarcastically. "Mom, everything you've done has been for your own benefit, to feel needed, to have control over my life. But I'm not a little girl anymore." I walked towards the door, feeling as if each step cost me years of my life. When I reached the threshold, I turned back one last time, hoping to see some sign of remorse in her eyes, some hint of the sweet girl she once was. But all I saw was impatience. Impatience for me to leave at once and let her celebrate her birthday without the nuisance I represented. "Happy birthday, Rebecca," I murmured, and walked out of that house, closing the door behind me. I didn't know at that moment that it would be the last time I would enter that house as the mother who had sacrificed everything. Because what my daughter didn't know was that she had just awakened something in me that had been dormant for decades. I arrived at my small apartment with my legs shaking and my heart shattered. The $200 cake ended up in the trash, its melted candles like my tears that wouldn't stop falling. I sat on my old sofa, the same sofa where I had nursed Rebecca as a baby, where I had read her stories for years, where I had cried with happiness every time she called me Mommy. How had it come to this? How could my own daughter, the child I had carried in my womb for 9 months, wish for my death with such coldness? I began to remember everything, absolutely everything I had done for her over these 45 years. When she was 3 years old and got sick with pneumonia, I worked triple shifts at the hospital to pay for her medicine. It was $1,200 for antibiotics that my insurance didn't cover, money I got by selling my late mother's jewelry. When she turned 16 and wanted to go to the prom, I worked entire weekends for 4 months to buy her that pink dress that cost $800. I remember how her eyes shone when she tried it on. "Thanks, Mommy. You're the best in the world," she had said, hugging me tightly. In college, when she changed her major for the 3rd time, I paid for every semester without a single complaint. $42,000 in total, money I got by mortgaging my house. "Don't worry, my girl," I would say every time she called me crying. "Your education is the most important thing." When she married Hugo, I organized and paid for the entire wedding. $35,000 so she could have the wedding of her dreams. The most elegant hall in the city, the most beautiful flowers, the menu she chose without worrying about the price. "I want my princess to have everything," I said as I signed check after check. And then came the house, that cursed house where she had just humiliated me. When Rebecca and Hugo decided they wanted to buy their first property, I didn't hesitate for a second. "Don't worry about the down payment," I told them. "I'll take care of it." It was $150,000 from my life savings, the money I had been putting away for my retirement. But it didn't end there. When the twins arrived 5 years ago, I became the free nanny. Every night Rebecca wanted to go out with Hugo. Every time they had plans and needed someone to watch the kids, there I was. Without charging a cent, happy to be able to help my daughter have the life she had always dreamed of. When Hugo lost his job last year, who paid the mortgage payments for 8 months? I did. $16,000 that I took from my pension, money that meant eating rice and beans for weeks to stretch my income. And when the twins needed braces, another $4,000 that I covered without a second thought. "Don't worry," I told them, seeing their distressed faces. "That's what grandparents are for." I got up from the sofa and went to my desk, where I kept all the receipts, all the proof of every cent I had spent on my daughter and her family. There were boxes and boxes of documents I had saved, not out of distrust, but because it made me proud to remember everything I had been able to do for them. I started doing the math. Raising Rebecca, from birth until she became independent, approximately $200,000. College, $42,000. The wedding, $35,000. The down payment on the house, $150,000. The mortgage payments when Hugo was unemployed, $16,000. The twins' braces, $4,000. Birthday and Christmas gifts over all these years, at least another $20,000. The total was devastating, more than $460,000, almost $500,000 that I had invested in my daughter's happiness. And all for what? To hear that her greatest wish was for me to die. Tears fell onto the papers as I added and subtracted. If I had put that money into a savings account with compound interest, today I would have more than $600,000. I could be living in a nice house, traveling the world, enjoying a comfortable retirement, instead of counting pennies in this tiny apartment. But no, I had chosen to invest in love. I had chosen to believe that the money spent on my daughter was a good investment, that every sacrifice was worth it because in the end, I would have a daughter who would love me and take care of me in my old age. How stupid I had been. I picked up the phone and dialed Rebecca's number. I needed to hear her voice one more time. I needed to confirm that she had really said those terrible words. "What do you want now, Mom?" She answered with annoyance after the 5th ring. "Rebecca, I need to know if you really meant what you said to me today," I asked, my voice trembling. "Of course I was serious," she replied without a hint of remorse. "Mom, it's time for you to understand that I need space. Your obsession with me isn't healthy." "Obsession?" I repeated in disbelief. "To call a mother's love an obsession? Yes, exactly that. And I hope that after today, you finally get the message. I need you to respect my boundaries and let me live my life." I hung up the phone without saying goodbye. There had been no misunderstanding. My daughter truly believed that my love was a burden, that my presence in her life was a problem she needed to solve. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, remembering every beautiful moment we had shared, every hug, every "I love you," Mommy that had come from her lips. Had it all been a lie? Or had I simply raised a daughter who had become so selfish she couldn't see beyond her own needs? At 3 o'clock in the morning, something inside me changed. The sadness began to transform into something different, into rage, into indignation, into the clear understanding that I had been used, manipulated, and discarded like a used tissue. My daughter wanted me to die. Well then, maybe it was time to give her exactly what she asked for. The next day, I woke up with a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years. Sadness had given way to something more powerful: determination. If my daughter wanted me to disappear from her life, I would, but not in the way she expected. I got dressed in my best clothes and went out with a clear purpose. First stop, the bank where I had the joint account with Rebecca for her house's emergency expenses. The account I had opened just in case, and into which I had deposited $20,000 for any unforeseen event. "Good morning, Mrs. Julieta." The manager, Mr. Martinez, greeted me. He had known me for years. "How can I help you today?" "I want to close joint account number 4587, a 2891, I said with a smile he interpreted as kindness, but which was actually pure vengeance. "Are you sure? That account has a considerable balance of $20,000, he cautioned, checking his computer screen. "Completely sure. I want to transfer all of that money to my personal account," I replied, signing the papers with a steady hand. Seeing those $20,000 return to my personal account gave me a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. It was just the beginning. Next stop, the mortgage loan office. The previous year, when Hugo was unemployed, I had co-signed the mortgage on their house. That meant, if they couldn't pay, the responsibility fell on me. But it also meant I had rights to that property. Mrs. Julieta, the officer, Miss Gonzalez, greeted me. "What brings you here?" "I want to review the mortgage contract where I am listed as a co-signer," I explained. "I need to understand exactly what my rights and obligations are." As she looked for the documents, I remembered the day I signed those papers. Rebecca had cried with emotion. "Thank you, Mommy. I don't know what we would do without you." "You're our salvation," she had said, hugging me tightly. Hugo had also thanked me, promising they would never be late on the payments. "Here are the documents," the officer said, placing a thick folder in front of me. "As the co-signer, you are responsible for the payments if the primary holders cannot make them. But you also have the right to claim the property if you believe the debtors will be unable to fulfill their obligations." She completed the sentence as I read the contract carefully. "Exactly. Is there a problem with the payments?" she asked with professional concern. "I am assessing the situation," I replied, putting a copy of all the documents in my bag. "What would I need to do if I decided to exercise my rights as a co-signer?" "You would have to demonstrate that there is a risk of non-payment or that there have already been significant delays. In your case, I see that you covered 8 monthly payments last year, which is already sufficient evidence that the primary holders lack financial stability." Perfect. Hugo had lost his job again last week, information Rebecca had given me without thinking about the implications. She thought she was indirectly asking for my help, but what she was really giving me was the ammunition for my revenge. I left that office with a smile. My dear daughter had no idea the storm that was coming. Third stop. My personal lawyer, Mr. Anselmo Garcia, a 70-year-old man who had been a friend of my late husband. He knew my entire family situation and had witnessed my sacrifices for Rebecca for decades. "Julieta," he greeted me warmly. "What brings you to my office?" "It's not often I see you here." "Anselmo, I need your help with something very important," I said, sitting down across from his desk. "I want to change my will completely." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Has something happened with Rebecca?" I told him everything. Every hurtful word, every moment of contempt, the coldness with which she had wished me dead on her own birthday. Anselmo listened in silence, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "Julieta," he said finally, "I am so sorry for what you're going through. I never thought Rebecca was capable of something like this, after everything you've done for her." "Neither did I sighed. "But I've made my decision. I want to change my will and leave everything to a charitable organization. I also want to set up a trust for my grandchildren, but I want Rebecca to have no access to that money until they turn 25. "That can be done," Anselmo nodded, taking notes. Do you also want to change the beneficiaries of your life insurance policy? Of course. Everything that is in Rebecca's name? I want it changed. My daughter wants me to die, but when that happens, she won't receive a single cent from me. We spent 2 hours reviewing all my legal documents, my $100,000 life insurance policy, my savings, my apartment, my investments. Everything that was previously designated for Rebecca would now go to the Orphaned Children's Foundation, where I had volunteered for years. There's something else, I said as we were finishing. I want you to prepare all the documents to reclaim the house where Rebecca lives. As a co-signer on the mortgage, I have rights, and her husband just lost his job again. Anselmo's eyes lit up with understanding. Now I see where you're going with all this. Are you sure you want to go this far? Completely sure, I replied with a determination that surprised me. My daughter told me her life would be easier if I disappeared. Well, I'm going to disappear. But first, I'm going to make sure she understands exactly what it means to live without me and without everything I've done for her. When I left Anselmo's office, it was already dark. I walked through the streets of my neighborhood feeling renewed, as if I had woken up from a very long dream. For 45 years, I had lived for Rebecca. I had sacrificed my own dreams and desires to give her everything she wanted, but not anymore. I got back to my apartment and poured myself a glass of wine, something I hadn't done in years. Toasting to myself was something completely new, but it felt incredibly liberating. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved for months, but had never dared to use. It was for a travel agency specializing in retirees that offered packages for living abroad. "Good evening. This is Julieta Morales," I said when they answered. "I saw your promotion about living in Switzerland. Could you send me complete information?" "Of course, Mrs. Morales. Switzerland is a very popular destination among our clients. We have several programs, from temporary stays to permanent residency. What kind of information do you need?" "Everything," I replied without hesitation. "I want to know everything about how a 72-year-old person can start a new life in Switzerland." After hanging up, I stared out the window at the city, where I had lived my entire life. Soon, all of this would be just a memory. My daughter had asked for my disappearance as a birthday gift, and I was going to grant it to her in the most spectacular way possible. What Rebecca didn't know was that her wish was about to become her worst nightmare. The following days were a roller coaster of emotions and secret preparations. Each morning I woke with a mix of pain and determination that pushed me forward with my plan. It was as if I had awakened from a long slumber where I had lived solely to please my daughter, and now I was finally living for myself. On Wednesday morning, my phone rang. It was Rebecca. For a moment, my heart raced, thinking that maybe she had reconsidered, that perhaps she was going to apologize for the terrible words she had said to me. How naive I still was. "Mom," she said in that cold voice she had adopted lately, "I need you to do me a favor. Not even a hello or how are you. Straight to the point, as if I were her personal employee. What do you need?" I asked, curious to see how far her audacity would go. "The twins have a presentation at school on Friday, and Hugo and I have an important work dinner. Could you watch them that night?" The irony was delicious. The same woman who had wished me dead as a birthday gift was now asking me to babysit her children as if nothing had happened, as if I were a resource available 24 hours a day. "I can't," I replied simply. "What do you mean you can't?" she asked with genuine surprise. She was clearly not used to me saying no. "I have other plans," I lied with a smile she couldn't see. "What plans could you possibly have?" she asked, with a condescending tone that deeply wounded me. As if at 72 years old, I had no right to a life of my own. "Plans that are none of your business," I replied, staying calm. "Find another babysitter." "But Mom, I can't find a babysitter on such short notice. Besides, since when do you charge me to watch your own grandchildren?" There it was, the emotional manipulation she had used on me for years. But this time, it wasn't going to work. "Since you told me that my greatest gift to you would be for me to die," I responded coldly. "If you want me to disappear from your life, I'm starting now." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Rebecca let out a sarcastic laugh. "Are you seriously going to punish me like a pouting child?" she said. I thought you'd be over the drama after a few days. It's not drama, Rebecca. It's respect for your wish. You wanted me to disappear, so that's what I'll do. Fine, she said with annoyance. If you want to be that childish, be my guest. But don't come crying to me later when you feel lonely. She hung up without saying goodbye. Perfect. Every interaction confirmed I was making the right decision. That afternoon I went to the bank again, this time to do something I never thought I would do: withdraw most of my savings in cash. It was $30,000 that I put in an envelope and stored in my personal safe. The money I would need for my new life in Switzerland. I also called the travel agency and confirmed my trip. A flight to Zurich for next Tuesday, with the option to extend my stay indefinitely. The initial cost was $8,000. Money I paid without blinking. It was the most expensive and smartest investment I had made in years. On Thursday morning, I received an unexpected visit. It was my neighbor Elvira, a 68-year-old woman who lived in the apartment next door and with whom I had developed a friendship over the last 5 years. Julietta, she said, sitting in my living room with a cup of coffee. You seem different these days. Has something happened? Elvira had been a silent witness to all my sacrifices for Rebecca. She had seen me cancel plans with her to go running whenever my daughter needed me. She had seen the bags of expensive food I bought to take to Rebecca while I ate canned soups to save money. I told her everything, every painful detail of what had happened on Rebecca's birthday, and also all the plans I had been making during the week. My God, Julietta, Elvira murmured, her eyes filled with tears. I can't believe Rebecca said something so cruel to you after everything you've done for her. The worst part is, she said it as if it were the most normal thing in the world, I explained. As if I were a nuisance in her life that needed to be eliminated. And you're really going to go to Switzerland? Yes, I replied firmly. I've already bought the ticket. I'm leaving on Tuesday. Elvira took my hands warmly. You know you have my full support, right? What Rebecca did to you is unforgivable. There's something else, I said, lowering my voice. I'm going to need your help with something very important. I explained my entire plan to her. How I wanted Rebecca to believe I had actually died, at least for a while. Elvira would be my accomplice. The person who would find my empty apartment and my farewell letter. It's brilliant, Elvira murmured with a mischievous smile. That ungrateful girl is finally going to understand what it means to lose you. Will you help me? Of course I will. In fact, I think it's exactly what Rebecca needs to wake up. That night I worked on the most important letter of my life. The letter that Rebecca would find on her table and that would change everything forever. I wrote and rewrote every word, making sure it conveyed exactly what I wanted to say. My dearest Rebecca, the letter began, you asked me for your birthday gift to disappear from your life, and I have decided to grant your wish. By the time you read this letter, I will be far from here, starting the life I should have lived years ago instead of sacrificing it all for you. I continued writing for hours, documenting every penny I had spent on her, every sacrifice I had made, every opportunity I had lost by always being available for her needs. But it wasn't a bitter letter. It was an educational one. I wanted her to understand exactly what she had lost. Along with this letter, you will find all the legal documents I have signed this week. I continued writing. The change to my will, the cancellation of your health insurance that I was paying for, the notification that as a co-signer on your mortgage, I have decided to exercise my rights due to Hugo's job instability, and the cancellation of all financial benefits you received from me. It was a 23-page letter that meticulously detailed everything that was going to change in her life now that I had disappeared as she wished. Your life will be much easier without me, the letter concluded, but it will also be much more expensive. I hope it's worth it. On Friday night, as I packed my most important belongings into 2 suitcases, I received a call from Rebecca. I didn't answer. She called 3 more times, but I just let the phone ring. I had nothing left to say to her. The next day, Saturday, Hugo showed up at my door. He looked exhausted and desperate. Julietta, he said in a pleading voice, Rebecca told me what happened between you. I know what she said was wrong, but please, don't do this to our family. Do what? I asked, feigning innocence. Stop helping us, withdrawing from our lives like this. The kids need you, we need you. How interesting. When Rebecca wanted to get rid of me, I was a nuisance. But when they realized everything I did for them, suddenly they needed me. Hugo, I said calmly, your wife was very clear with me. My presence in her life is a burden she no longer wants to bear. I am only respecting her wishes. But, Julieta, you know how Rebecca is when she gets angry. She didn't mean it. Oh no? Because she seemed very serious when she wished me dead as a birthday gift. Hugo lowered his head. He knew he had no arguments to defend the indefensible. Please, he insisted, give me a chance to fix this. I'll talk to Rebecca. I'll make her understand how wrong she is. It's too late for that, I replied, slowly closing the door. Give my grandchildren a kiss from me. Sunday was my last day in that city. I spent the morning walking through the places that had been important in my life. The hospital where I had worked for 40 years, the park where I had taken Rebecca as a child, the church where I had married her father. It was my silent farewell to a life I had lived completely for others. Monday would be the beginning of a life I would finally live for myself. On Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves or regret, but from a strange excitement I hadn't felt in decades. The anticipation of an adventure. At 72 years old, I was about to begin the life I had always dreamed of but never dared to live. At 5 o'clock on Monday morning, Elvira knocked on my door as planned. She brought fresh coffee and a conspiratorial smile that filled me with energy. Ready for your great escape? She asked, winking. More than ready, I replied, carrying my 2 suitcases to the door. You have the spare keys to my apartment. Right here, she said, showing me the set of keys I had given her the night before. And I also have the letter for Rebecca and all the legal documents you're leaving on her table. We had planned everything meticulously. Elvira would wait until Wednesday to go to Rebecca's apartment and deliver the documents, pretending she had found my apartment empty and had become worried about my disappearance. She would be the one to give Rebecca the news that I was gone forever. Remember, I said as we called a cab, you have to act very concerned. Tell her I didn't answer the phone for 2 days, that you knocked on my door and got no response, and that when you used the emergency keys, you found the apartment empty and the letter on her table. Don't worry, Julieta. I was a drama teacher for 30 years. It will be the performance of a lifetime, Elvira said with a mischievous smile. The taxi arrived promptly at 6 o'clock in the morning. As they loaded my suitcases, I took one last look at my apartment. I had lived there for 15 years, but strangely, I felt no nostalgia. It was as if I were finally freeing myself from a prison I had built myself. To the airport? The taxi driver asked. To the airport, I confirmed, and it felt as if those 2 words marked the beginning of my new existence. During the 40-minute ride, I thought about everything I was leaving behind. My volunteer work at the hospital, my daily routines, the constant worry about Rebecca and her problems. But I also thought about everything that awaited me. The freedom to make my own decisions, to spend my money on myself, to live without the constant weight of my daughter's emotional demands. At the airport, while waiting for my flight, I received 3 calls from Rebecca that I didn't answer. Then a text message arrived. Mom, you're being ridiculous. The kids are asking for you. Call me. I deleted the message without replying. It was fascinating how now that I wasn't available 24/7, she suddenly needed me. The flight to Zurich was long but peaceful. For the first time in years, no one knew where I was. No one could call me to ask for favors, money, or time. It was an intoxicating feeling of freedom I hadn't experienced since before I was a mother. During the 12-hour journey, I wrote in my journal everything that had happened in the last week. Every detail, every emotion, every decision that had led me to this moment. I wanted to remember exactly how it felt to break free from a toxic relationship, even when that relationship was with my own daughter. I arrived in Zurich on Tuesday night, local time. The travel agency representative was waiting for me at the airport with a sign bearing my name. He was a kind young man named Klaus, who spoke perfect Spanish. Mrs. Julieta, he greeted me with a genuine smile. Welcome to Switzerland. I hope you're ready for a new adventure. More than ready, I replied, and for the first time in weeks, my smile was completely authentic. Klaus took me to a beautiful furnished apartment in the center of Zurich that I had rented for a month, while I decided if I wanted to stay permanently. It was small but cozy, with windows overlooking a lovely park and a partial view of the lake. "Here is all the information about the city," Klaus said, handing me a thick folder. "Places to eat, activities for people your age, German classes, social groups. I've also scheduled an appointment for you with a financial advisor for tomorrow afternoon to help you with the paperwork if you decide to stay permanently." That night, I slept better than I had in years. There was no phone that could ring, no one who needed anything from me, no responsibilities other than taking care of myself. On Wednesday morning, I woke up early and went out to explore the city. I had breakfast at a charming cafe by the lake, bought fresh flowers for my temporary apartment, and for the first time in decades, I spent money on something completely unnecessary, a beautiful silk scarf that cost $100. I bought it simply because I liked it, without worrying about the price or whether that money could be better spent on my daughter's needs. As I walked through the streets of Zurich, I mentally calculated how much money I had spent on Rebecca in just the last 5 years. Between the mortgage payments when Hugo was unemployed, the twins' braces, the constant gifts, the gas to go babysit the kids, the food I always brought when I visited them, it had been at least $50,000. $50,000 that I could have used to travel the world, to live comfortably, to fulfill the dreams I had postponed for decades. Instead, I had given it to a daughter who considered my love a burden and my presence a nuisance. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Zurich time, I calculated it would be 8 o'clock in the morning in my hometown. Elvira would be getting ready to go to Rebecca's apartment and deliver the letter that would change everything. I sat on a bench by the lake and waited. I knew that in a few hours my phone would start ringing desperately. Rebecca would finally understand what it meant to truly lose me. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone started to vibrate. It was Rebecca. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. It immediately rang again. Rebecca again. This time, I answered. "Mom?" she screamed, her voice breaking. "Where are you? Elvira came to the house with a letter from you. She said you disappeared. What's going on?" "Hello, Rebecca," I replied calmly, enjoying the Swiss lake as I spoke. "Have you read the letter?" "Yes, I read it. Are you crazy? How could you do this to us? Where are you?" "I am exactly where I need to be," I replied. "Away from you, as you wished. But I didn't want this. I didn't want you to actually leave. I was just angry. I didn't mean it." There it was, Rebecca's typical tactic. Minimize the damage she had caused, make me feel guilty for reacting to her cruelty. "You didn't mean it when you told me your biggest birthday wish was for me to die?" I asked. "Because you sounded quite convincing. I was just frustrated. Hugo lost his job again. The kids are having trouble at school. I'm under a lot of stress. I shouldn't have taken it out on you." "You're right, you shouldn't have. But it's done, and words can't be taken back." "But Mom, please, come back. We need you. I need you." How interesting. Now she needed me. Now that she had read in the letter all the financial benefits she had lost. Now that she knew she could lose her house. Now that she understood she would have to pay for her own health insurance and find a babysitter for the twins. "Do you need me? Or do you need my money?" I asked directly. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I need you," she finally murmured, but her voice didn't sound convincing. "Rebecca, for 45 years, I lived for you. I sacrificed my dreams, my money, my time, my opportunities. And when I finally needed to feel that you loved and valued me, you told me you'd rather I were dead." Those words broke my heart in a way that I will never be able to repair. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. What I said to you was horrible. Sorry isn't enough, Rebecca. The damage is done. And you know what? Maybe it was the best thing you could have said to me, because it finally opened my eyes and made me realize I've been living my life the wrong way." "What do you mean?" "I mean that for the first time in decades, I'm living for myself. And it feels wonderful." "Where are you, Mom? Please, tell me," Rebecca pleaded, her voice choked with sobs. "The kids are asking for their grandma. They don't understand why you're not coming to see them." It was fascinating how now, when I was no longer available, the grandchildren suddenly missed me. For all these years, when I canceled my plans to take care of them, when I bought them expensive gifts, when I took them to the park while Rebecca went shopping. It was simply what was expected of me. But now that I was gone, my absence was felt. "The kids will be fine," I replied, looking at the Swiss mountains in the distance. "They are resilient. What they will learn is that actions have consequences and that hurtful words can destroy relationships forever." "But, Mom, please, you can't just disappear like this. What if something happens to you? What if you get sick? How will we know?" Now she was worried about my well-being. How convenient. "Rebecca, over the last 5 years, I've had 3 episodes of high blood pressure that landed me in the hospital. Do you know how many times you visited me? 0. You always had something more important to do. So don't come to me now with concerns about my health." "That's not true," she protested weakly. "Isn't it? The first time I was hospitalized, I called you from the emergency room. You told me you couldn't come because you had an appointment at the beauty salon. The second time, it was Hugo's birthday and you were celebrating. The third time, you simply didn't answer the phone." The silence on the other end of the line confirmed that she remembered each occasion perfectly. I thought it wasn't serious," she murmured. "Of course, because my health was never a priority for you. But my checks were." "It's not about the money," Rebecca shouted. "It's about you. I miss you, Mom. Do you miss me? Or do you miss having someone available 24 hours a day to solve your problems?" I hung up the phone without waiting for an answer. It immediately rang again, but this time I turned it off completely. I needed peace to enjoy my first night of freedom. That night I went out to dinner alone at an elegant restaurant by the lake. I ordered the most expensive dish on the menu, salmon with caviar that cost $80, and drank an entire bottle of French wine. It had been years since I had indulged in such luxuries, always thinking that the money could be useful for Rebecca. The next day, Thursday, I turned on my phone and found 47 missed calls and 23 text messages, all from Rebecca and Hugo. The messages evolved from pleas to threats. "Please, Mom, answer," said the first. "We're very worried," said the 5th. "If you don't answer, we're going to call the police," threatened the 10th. "We already called the police. They said there's nothing they can do because you left a letter explaining your departure," admitted the 15th. "The bank called us. You canceled the joint account. How are we going to pay for emergencies?" said the 20th. It was beautiful to see how the concern for my well-being quickly turned into panic over the financial implications of my absence. I decided to reply to just one message. "I am fine. I am exactly where I need to be. Do not look for me." The response arrived in less than 5 minutes. "You don't understand what you're doing. You're going to ruin us," the mortgage lawyer called. "He says you can take our house." There was the truth. She wasn't worried that I might be suffering or in danger. She was worried because she had finally understood the financial implications of losing me. I replied, "Now you understand what it's worth to have me in your life. Too bad you realized it too late." That afternoon I had my appointment with the Swiss financial advisor. He was an older, very professional man named Herr Moeller, who helped me understand all my options for residing permanently in Switzerland. "With your current savings and your American pension," he explained, "you can live comfortably here for the rest of your life. Switzerland has excellent healthcare programs for retired foreigners, and the quality of life is exceptional." For the first time in years, I talked openly about my finances without worrying about saving money for Rebecca's emergencies. It was liberating to calculate my expenses based solely on my own needs and desires. "You can also invest part of your savings in the Swiss economy," Herr Moeller continued. "The returns are stable and secure. In 5 years, you could double your net worth if you invest wisely." Double my net worth. How many times had I had that opportunity, but had preferred to spend the money on my daughter's whims? "There is something else I should tell you," the advisor added. "We have many clients in situations similar to yours. Older people who have come to Switzerland seeking a new beginning after complicated family relationships. You are not alone in this experience." That information comforted me deeply. I wasn't the only mother who had been manipulated and discarded by ungrateful children. There was a whole community of people who had chosen their own happiness over the toxic demands of their families. On Friday morning, I joined a hiking group for senior citizens. There were 8 women and 4 men, all between 60 and 75 years old, all with similar stories of late-life liberation. We walked along beautiful trails by the lake while sharing our experiences. I left my husband after 40 years of marriage. Maria, a 68-year-old from Spain, told me. One day I realized I had been living as his maid for decades, not his wife. It was the best decision of my life. I cut off contact with my 3 children, shared Hans, a 70-year-old German man. They only called me when they needed money. When I told them I wasn't going to finance their lives anymore, they called me a selfish father. Now I live in peace, and my money is my own. Hearing these stories confirmed that I had made the right decision. It wasn't selfish to prioritize my own happiness. It was a basic need for emotional survival. That night, while having dinner in my apartment, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I decided to answer out of curiosity. "Mrs. Julieta? This is Attorney Garcia. I work with your daughter Rebecca," said a professional male voice. "What do you want?" I asked directly. "Your daughter asked me to contact you because she is very concerned about your well-being. Apparently, you have left the country without leaving adequate contact information." "I left a very clear letter explaining my departure," I replied. "There is nothing illegal in what I have done." "Of course not, ma'am. But your daughter is also concerned about some financial decisions you apparently made before you left, specifically regarding the mortgage on her house." There was the real reason for the call. Rebecca had sent a lawyer to try to intimidate me into returning. "All my financial decisions were made in consultation with my own lawyer and are completely within my legal rights," I explained. "As a co-signer on that mortgage, I have the right to protect my interests when I believe there is a risk of non-payment. I understand your position, but perhaps we could find a solution that benefits both parties," the lawyer insisted. "The only solution that benefits both parties has already been implemented," I replied firmly. "I am living in peace, away from a toxic relationship, and my daughter is living with the consequences of her actions. It is exactly what we both needed. Mrs. Julieta, with all due respect, I think you are making rash decisions due to a temporary family argument. These things can be fixed with dialogue." "Temporary argument?" I repeated in disbelief. "Is that how Rebecca told you what happened? Did she tell you she wished me dead as a birthday gift?" There was an awkward silence on the other end of the line. "I believe there are misunderstandings that can be cleared up," the lawyer murmured. "There are no misunderstandings. There is a daughter who used and manipulated her mother for decades, and a mother who finally woke up and decided to live for herself. End of story." I hung up the phone, feeling powerful. Every day that passed in Switzerland, every day away from Rebecca's constant demands, I felt stronger and more certain of my decision. My daughter had asked me to disappear from her life, and I had granted her that wish. What she hadn't calculated was the real price of losing me forever. On Saturday morning, I decided to do something I had been putting off for years. I visited an art gallery in downtown Zurich. For decades, I had wanted to take painting classes, but there was always an emergency with Rebecca that required my time or my money. Now, for the first time, I could dedicate a full day to something that brought me pleasure without feeling guilty. I was admiring a painting of the Swiss Alps when my phone vibrated. This time it wasn't Rebecca. It was a number I recognized immediately. My old job at the hospital. I answered, intrigued. "Julieta?" "This is Dr. Martinez," said the familiar voice of the woman who had been my boss for the last 10 years of my career. "I just received the strangest call from your daughter. She says you've disappeared and wanted to know if we knew anything." "I haven't disappeared," I replied calmly. "I've simply moved and started a new life." "Really? That's wonderful. I always thought you deserved to enjoy your retirement without so many family worries," the doctor said with genuine joy. "May I ask where you are?" "In Switzerland," I replied, surprised at how natural it sounded to say. "I'm exploring the possibility of staying permanently." "Switzerland? What an exciting adventure. I'm so happy to hear you're finally doing something for yourself." Dr. Martinez had witnessed many occasions where I had to miss work or cancel extra shifts because Rebecca needed something urgently. She, better than anyone, understood the constant sacrifice that being Rebecca's mother had entailed. "But Julieta," she continued, "your daughter sounded quite desperate. She asked me that if I spoke with you, to tell you it's a family emergency." "Did she tell you what the emergency was?" I asked with curiosity. Something about financial problems and the children needing you, the doctor replied. But honestly, after hearing her demands on the phone, it sounded more like manipulation than a real emergency. It was comforting to know that people who knew us both could clearly see the toxic dynamic that had existed between Rebecca and me for years. Thank you for calling me, doctor. And don't worry, there's no real emergency, I assured her. After hanging up, I decided to turn my phone off completely for the rest of the weekend. I needed mental space to process everything I was experiencing and to make important decisions about my future. On Sunday, I joined a group tour to visit the mountain villages around Zurich. It was a group of 12 people, mostly retirees like me, all seeking adventure and new experiences. During the bus ride, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Ingrid, a 71-year-old German woman who had arrived in Switzerland 2 years earlier. "What brought you here?" she asked, as we admired the scenery from the window. "A daughter who told me her biggest birthday wish was for me to die," I replied without a filter. I no longer had the energy to sugarcoat reality. Ingrid looked at me with wide eyes. "Really?" Completely serious. After financing her house, practically raising her children, and sacrificing my retirement for her needs, she told me that my presence in her life was an unbearable burden. "My God," Ingrid murmured. "And what did you do? What she asked me to do?" "I disappeared from her life, and here I am." Ingrid smiled with admiration. "You are very brave. It took me 5 years to make the decision to walk away from my toxic family. My son and daughter-in-law treated me like an ATM with legs." For the rest of the day, Ingrid and I shared our stories. She had come to Switzerland after realizing that her adult children only contacted her when they needed money for their vacations, their new cars, or their whims. When she decided to set boundaries, they accused her of being a selfish mother and threatened to not let her see her grandchildren. The first few months were difficult, Ingrid confessed as we walked through a medieval town. The guilt was eating me alive. I thought maybe I really was selfish, that a good mother should always sacrifice for her children. "And what changed your perspective?" I asked. "I realized that my children never wondered if I was happy, if I had enough money for my own needs, or if my constant sacrifices were hurting me. They only cared about what I could give them. That's not love, Giulietta. That's exploitation." Her words resonated deeply in my heart. For decades, I had mistaken emotional manipulation for filial love, constant demands for genuine need. That night, in my apartment, I decided to turn on my phone for the first time in several days. I had 62 missed calls and 47 text messages, most from Rebecca and Hugo, but there were also some from unknown numbers. I read the text messages chronologically, observing the evolution of my daughter's panic. The first ones were still emotional pleas. "Mom, please, come back. We need you. The kids are crying for you." But gradually, they became more desperate and financial. "The bank has scheduled a meeting with us for Friday. They say that as the co-signer, you have the right to take the house. They can't take our home over a misunderstanding." By the 5th day, the messages had turned aggressive. "This is ridiculous, Mom. You're ruining our lives over a tantrum. Act like an adult and come back." And finally, desperate. "I've called all the hospitals, the police, your friends. Nobody knows where you are. If something happens to you, it's going to be my fault. Please, just tell me you're okay." It was fascinating to observe how at no point did Rebecca genuinely apologize for wishing me dead. At no point did she acknowledge the cruelty of her words or express real remorse. Everything revolved around the negative consequences my absence had for her. I decided to reply one last time. "I am perfectly fine and happier than I have been in years. What you are experiencing now are the natural consequences of your actions. I hope this experience helps you understand the value of the people you love before it's too late with others in your life." The reply came immediately. "Please, Mom, we can fix this. I promise I will never say horrible things again. Just come back." I wrote my final response. "Empty promises don't mend broken hearts, Rebecca. The words you said to me revealed what you really think of me. You can't take back that truth with desperate promises." After sending that message, I blocked her number and all numbers associated with Hugo. I also blocked the unknown numbers that had been calling me. It was time to close that chapter for good. On Monday morning, I met again with Herr Moller to sign the papers that would allow me to reside permanently in Switzerland. I also made arrangements to permanently transfer my American pension and begin the process of selling my apartment in my hometown. Are you sure you want to make this permanent? Herr Moeller asked me. It's a very big decision. I have never been more sure of anything in my life, I replied, signing each document with a steady hand. For the first time in decades, I am making decisions based on my own happiness, not on the demands of others. That afternoon, I received a call from Elvira, my neighbor and accomplice. Her voice was excited. Julieta, you have to hear this, she said. Rebecca came to my apartment yesterday crying hysterically. She begged me to tell you to come back, that it was all a terrible misunderstanding. And what did you tell her? I asked. I told her the truth, that what she had said to you was unforgivable, and that if I were you, I would have disappeared forever too. You should have seen her face when she realized that even the neighbors knew how cruel she had been to you. Did she mention anything about the financial problems? I asked with curiosity. Oh yes. She told me that without your help they can't pay the mortgage, that the bank is pressuring them, that Hugo can't find a stable job, and that the kids need things for school they can't afford. Basically, she realized everything you did for them once she lost it. It was exactly what I had expected. She didn't miss me as a person. She missed my function as a financial provider and problem solver. Elvira, I said, when anyone asks about me, especially Rebecca, I want you to tell them that I am dead to them. Because, in a way, it's true. The Julieta, who constantly sacrificed for an ungrateful daughter, really died on her birthday. I understand perfectly, Elvira replied. And you know what? I think it's the best death you could have chosen. 3 weeks after my arrival in Switzerland, my new life had taken shape in ways I never imagined. I had enrolled in German classes 3 times a week, started a watercolor painting course on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and joined a book club for expatriates that met on Sundays. For the first time in decades, my calendar was filled with activities I had chosen, activities that brought me pleasure and personal growth. But the most surprising thing was the money. Without Rebecca's constant financial demands, my savings were not only stable, but they were growing. The investments I had made with Herr Moeller were already showing positive returns, and for the first time, I could calculate my financial future based solely on my own needs. That Thursday morning, as I was having breakfast at my favorite cafe by the lake, I received a call from an international number I didn't recognize. I hesitated to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Mrs. Julieta Morales? A female voice with an American accent asked. Yes, this is she. Who's calling? My name is Sarah Williams. I'm a social worker with the Department of Family Services in your hometown. I'm calling because we've received a report concerning your well-being. My blood ran cold. A report? What kind of report? Your daughter, Rebecca Morales, filed a report alleging that you may be suffering from dementia or cognitive decline, and that you made financial and life decisions that put you at risk. According to her, you disappeared suddenly and are living in precarious conditions abroad. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rebecca had gone to the extreme of involving social services, inventing a mental illness to invalidate my decisions and force my return. Miss Williams, I replied in a firm voice, I am not suffering from dementia or cognitive decline. I am living in Switzerland by my own choice, in a comfortable apartment with excellent medical care and in perfect mental state. My daughter's allegations are completely false. I understand your position, Mrs. Morales, but we need to verify your well-being. Would it be possible to coordinate a medical and psychological evaluation through the American consulate in Switzerland? Of course, I replied without hesitation. I am willing to undergo any evaluation that proves I am in perfect mental state and that my decisions have been made with complete lucidity. After coordinating the details for the evaluation, I hung up the phone feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. Rebecca had crossed a line from which there was no return. Not only had she wished me dead, but now she was trying to destroy my mental credibility to regain control over my money and my life. I immediately called my lawyer, Anselmo, in my hometown. Julieta, he greeted me with concern. I'm glad to hear your voice. I've had a very interesting week with your daughter. I can imagine. I just spoke with social services. Rebecca is accusing me of dementia. That's not all, Anselmo sighed. She also hired another lawyer to try to challenge all the legal changes you made before you left. She's claiming you weren't in your right mind when you signed them. Can she do that? She can try, but she has no solid legal basis. I have recordings of all our conversations where you clearly demonstrate total lucidity. Besides, the fact that you meticulously planned your departure and are living independently in Switzerland contradicts any allegation of cognitive decline. What else is she doing? She has tried to access your bank accounts, claiming concern for your well-being. She also tried to stop the process of reclaiming the house. But since everything is legally backed and she herself signed the documents acknowledging that Hugo lost his job again, she has no valid arguments. It was incredible how far Rebecca was willing to go to recover the financial benefits she had lost. Anselmo, I want you to prepare a defamation lawsuit against my daughter. Her false allegations about my mental state could affect my reputation and my legal rights. It will be a pleasure, Anselmo replied with satisfaction. After seeing how she has treated you, I think it's time she faced the legal consequences of her actions. 2 days later, I went to the American consulate in Zurich for the medical and psychological evaluations. The American doctor who examined me was an older, experienced man who immediately understood the situation. Mrs. Morales, he said after a thorough 3-hour evaluation, not only are you in perfect mental state, but the decisions you have made demonstrate admirable lucidity and courage. Your daughter is clearly trying to manipulate the legal system to recover financial benefits. Is that going to be officially documented? Absolutely. I am going to send a detailed report to social services explaining that her allegations are unfounded and that you are living independently and healthily in Switzerland. That same afternoon, I received a call from the social worker. Mrs. Morales, we have received the medical report from the consulate. It is clear that your daughter's allegations are baseless. We are going to close the case and notify Rebecca that her reports were unfounded. Thank you, I replied. Will this remain on record somewhere? Yes. It will be documented that she filed a false report about the well-being of a family member, which can have legal implications if it happens again. Perfect. Not only had Rebecca failed in her attempt to invalidate my decisions, but she now had an official record of filing false reports. That night, I decided to do something I had been putting off. Write an open letter detailing my entire experience. Not for Rebecca, but for other mothers who might be living through similar situations of manipulation and emotional abuse by adult children. I wrote for 4 hours, documenting every sacrifice I had made, every manipulation I had suffered, and every step I had taken to reclaim my dignity and my life. It was a 20-page letter I titled, When a Mother's Love Becomes Self-Destruction, My Story of Liberation at 72. I decided to send the letter to an online blog I had discovered, specializing in stories of older women who had found the courage to radically change their lives. A week later, I received an enthusiastic response from the editor. Julieta, she wrote, your story is powerful and inspiring. We have received hundreds of comments from women who completely identify with your experience. Would you be willing to participate in a video interview for our YouTube channel? I accepted immediately. It was time to use my experience to help other women who were trapped in toxic family dynamics. The interview was published 2 weeks later and quickly went viral. Thousands of women shared similar stories of adult children who manipulated them emotionally and exploited them financially. The comments were a catalog of pain and recognition. My 40-year-old son lives in my house, doesn't pay rent, and yells at me when I ask him to look for a job, one woman wrote. My daughter only calls me when she needs money for her vacations, but never has time to visit me when I'm sick, another shared. I thought I was the only mother who felt used by her own children, confessed a third. But the most impactful thing came a week after the interview was published. I received an email from an address I recognized immediately. It was Hugo, my former son-in-law. Julieta, he wrote, I saw your interview on YouTube. I need you to know that I completely agree with you. What Rebecca said to you was unforgivable, and the way she has treated you for years is unacceptable. I have witnessed how she manipulates and uses you, but I never had the courage to confront her because we were so dependent on your financial help. He continued, I want you to know that the kids miss you very much and don't understand why you don't come to see them anymore. Rebecca has told them that you are sick and can't visit, but I believe they deserve to know the truth when they are older. The email ended. I know it's probably too late for apologies, but I wanted you to know that at least one person in this family recognizes how badly we treated you and how much you sacrificed for us. I hope you are happy in your new life. I read the email 3 times before deciding how to respond. Finally, I wrote, Hugo, I appreciate your honesty, but apologies after the fact do not change the harm that was done. I hope this experience helps you to be a better husband and father, and that you teach your children to value the people who love them before it's too late. It was the first time someone from my family had publicly acknowledged the abuse I had suffered. It didn't change my decision to stay away, but it did give me a sense of validation I had been needing for years. My new life in Switzerland was flourishing in ways I never imagined. I had real friends who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give. I had hobbies and passions that I had rediscovered. I had peace of mind and financial stability. And most importantly, I had dignity. 6 months after my arrival in Switzerland, my life had taken a shape I had never dreamed possible. It was a perfect spring morning when I received a call that would change everything once more. It was Elvira, my dear neighbor and accomplice. Julieta, she said, her voice excited, you have to hear this. Rebecca lost the house. My heart stopped for a moment. Despite everything, a part of me still worried about the well-being of my grandchildren. What happened exactly? I asked. The bank foreclosed last week. Hugo couldn't find a stable job. They fell behind on payments. And since you are the co-signer and are exercising your legal rights, the bank proceeded with the foreclosure. Rebecca came to me yesterday crying, completely desperate. And the children? They're fine. They moved to a small apartment on the other side of town. Hugo finally got a job at a factory, earning much less than before, but at least it's stable. Rebecca had to go back to work too. It was a strange mix of feelings I experienced. I didn't feel joy at their suffering, but I did feel a deep satisfaction of justice. For the first time in their lives, Rebecca and Hugo were experiencing the real consequences of their decisions without having someone to rescue them. There's something else, Elvira continued. Rebecca asked me if I knew how to contact you. She said she wants to apologize for real, that she finally understands everything she lost when you left. And what did you tell her? I told her that some wounds are too deep to heal, and that some words can never be taken back. I also told her that you are thriving in your new life, and that it's probably better for both of you if she doesn't try to contact you. Elvira was right. Over these 6 months, I had built an inner peace that I didn't want to risk for empty promises from a daughter who had repeatedly shown that she only valued me when she needed me. That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from my lawyer. Anselmo, Julieta, I have some interesting news, he said. Rebecca's house has now been sold by the bank, and since you were the co-signer, you have the right to recover your initial investment of $150,000, plus accrued interest. How much is that in total? $185,000. The bank has already approved the transfer. The money will be in your Swiss account next week. It was incredible. Not only had I recovered my original investment, but I had gained an additional $35,000. Money that would have been lost forever if I had continued to be the ever-sacrificing mother. There's something else too, Anselmo continued. Your apartment in your hometown has finally sold. After commissions and expenses, the net amount is $95,000. In total, I was receiving almost $300,000 from assets I had written off as lost. With my existing savings and the investments I had made in Switzerland, my total net worth now exceeded $500,000. At 72 years old, I was richer than I had ever been in my life. That night I celebrated at my favorite restaurant by the lake. I ordered French champagne and toasted to the brave woman who had had the courage to start over when all seemed lost. As I dined, I thought about the entire journey. I had begun this journey as a broken and humiliated mother, devastated by the cruel words of an ungrateful daughter. But now, I was an independent, financially stable woman, surrounded by genuine friends, and living the life I had always dreamed of. The next day, I decided to do something I had been considering for weeks. Write a full book about my experience. Not just my story, but a practical guide for older women who were trapped in toxic family relationships. I contacted a Swiss publisher that specialized in self-help and personal growth books. The editor, a woman named Brigitte, was immediately interested. "Julieta," she said during our meeting, "your story touches on a subject that affects millions of women but is rarely spoken of openly. Emotional abuse by adult children is an epidemic problem that needs to be exposed." I spent the next 3 months writing When Love Hurts, Freeing Yourself from Family Emotional Abuse After 70. The book documented not only my personal experience, but also practical strategies for recognizing manipulation, setting healthy boundaries, and finding the courage to prioritize one's own well-being. The book was published 8 months later and became a bestseller in several European countries. The letters I received from readers were incredible. Women from all over the world wrote to me, telling me how my story had given them the courage to make radical changes in their own lives. "I read your book and finally understood that I'm not a bad mother for refusing to continue financing my 35-year-old son's irresponsibility," wrote Maria from Spain. "Your story helped me understand that true love does not require self-destruction," wrote Carmen from Mexico. "After reading your book, I sold my large house and moved to a small apartment I can afford without depending on my children's help. For the first time in years, I sleep in peace," shared Rosa from Argentina. But the letter that moved me the most arrived a year after the book's publication. It was from a young mother named Andrea, Mrs. "Julieta," she wrote, "I am 30 years old and have a 65-year-old mother who has sacrificed her entire life for me and my siblings. After reading your book, I realized that we are treating her exactly as Rebecca treated you. Your story opened my eyes and made me understand that I was repeating a toxic pattern that could destroy my relationship with my mother forever. Yesterday, I called my mom and apologized for all the years of taking her for granted. I also told her that I want to help her fulfill her own dreams instead of expecting her to always be available for mine. Thank you for helping me understand this before it was too late." That letter made me cry with joy. My pain had served to prevent other families from going through the same destruction. 2 years after my arrival in Switzerland, I received a physical letter in my mailbox. The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, but I couldn't immediately place it. When I opened it, my heart stopped. It was from my grandchildren, now 12 years old. "Dear Grandma Julieta," they wrote in childish script, "Dad told us the truth about why you left. He told us that Mom said very mean things to you, and that's why you decided to start a new life far away from us. We want you to know that we miss you very much and that we understand why you left. We also want you to know that we are proud of you for being so brave. When we are older, we would like to visit you in Switzerland if you want. We love you, Grandma." The letter was signed by both twins. It included drawings they had made of me living happily in the Swiss mountains. I cried for an hour after reading that letter. Not from sadness, but from the understanding that my decision to preserve my dignity had been the right one, even if it had meant moving away from people I loved. I decided to write back to them. "My dearest grandchildren, your words are the most beautiful gift I have received in years. I love you deeply and I always will, no matter the distance. When you are older and can make your own decisions, the doors of my heart and my home will always be open to you. Until then, I want you to know that your grandmother is living a full and happy life, surrounded by beauty and peace. Hold on to this love you feel for me, but also learn from this experience. Words have the power to build or to destroy, and relationships are based on mutual respect, not on one-sided sacrifice. I love you with all my heart." Today, 3 years after that terrible birthday that changed my life forever, I am sitting on my balcony in Zurich, looking at the mountains as I write the final lines of my story. I am 75 years old, with a net worth of over $600,000, a best-selling book, dear friends from all over the world, and an inner peace I thought I would never experience again. Rebecca asked me for a birthday gift to disappear from her life. I granted her that wish in the most spectacular way possible. What she never calculated was that in losing me, she not only lost a mother who loved her unconditionally, but she also lost the person who had kept her financial world stable for decades. My disappearance was my gift to her. My new life was my gift to myself. And it was worth every tear, every sacrifice, and every moment of pain that brought me here. Because sometimes the only way to save yourself is to have the courage to lose yourself completely, only to be reborn as the person you were always meant to be.